I decided to make it out to Manhattan Beach for no reason, except I was talking to somebody yesterday and she mentioned that she lived in Manhattan Beach. And I have no connection to her. I just thought it sounded like a cool place to go. And I've come close to getting to Manhattan Beach a couple of times, but there was some kind of road work going on or something, some barricade between Brighton Beach Avenue and Oriental Boulevard. But I was able to get through today. You can see it's pretty hazy. It's July 5th, day after July 4th. And I've spent the last few nights doing something I wasn't expecting to have to do. And I'm trying to keep a good attitude about it, but everything's going to catch up to me eventually. But I've been back in contact with somebody that I guess you could say I was never fully out of contact with, since we're still connected on the networks and everything. But basically I'm helping a friend write an obituary for a mutual friend of ours. And he left us on June 30th. Victim of a positively voracious brain tumor. I've made this observation before, that you can know somebody for a long, long time and have no idea what their middle name is. And that came up in this discussion. Reminds me of the cynical saying that the Catholics have about the church members who basically only come around for baptisms, weddings, and funerals. And the cynical term they use is hatch, match, and dispatch. And I think I've seen it many times in the past where somebody's middle name is only ever used on birth certificates, weddings, and funerals. So I knew him for something like 24 years, and now I know his middle name. It's been hazier, but it's still pretty relatively low visibility. I'm not going to see the nukes until they're about a mile away. I imagine this place was a mob scene yesterday. During the day, July 4th. I'm no fan of fireworks, really. I don't mind seeing them on TV, but in person they kind of have a way of rupturing my innards. But I heard they did some cool stuff with drones this year. Let me see if I can find video of that. Place the hot coals inside. Yeah, look at that. There used to be a payphone here. Two of them, actually. There were probably two of these yellow mats, but one of them disappeared. Well, I never would have encountered these payphones. These are all the way at the end of Manhattan Beach, at the entrance, near the entrance to Kingsborough Community College. It looks like most of these shops are gone. The bookstore is gone. This place looks like it's gone. That's gone. Whatever was there. I think that was a Subway sandwich. The only place left is this pizzeria. Let's see what's in the bookstore. Any books? I don't see a single book. Just some errant electrical outlets on the floor. And it looks like there used to be another payphone right here. Just maybe 20, 30 feet away from those other two that used to be there. I'm telling you, man, there used to be payphones everywhere. Everywhere in New York. But that is almost certainly the concrete smear where there used to be a payphone. And these two poles are also a telltale sign. They take away the payphone, but they leave the poles. I never understood why. Must be a different department. The technology division gets rid of the payphone, but I guess it would be Department of Transportation that gets rid of the poles. I don't know. Okay, so just for the hell of it, I went back to Cyclomedia, which is my favorite alternative to Street View or Microsoft's what do they call it, Street Side. It has its shortcomings, but I prefer it for its lack of bloat and advertising. Anyway, I went back to that intersection or that block, and yep, sure enough, there's that payphone that is remembered today only by that concrete smear, and there are those two metal poles left behind. It's interesting, like that's outside the pizzeria. That's the only place still open here. Looks like this place was empty for a while, and somebody tried to open a bookstore there, and that obviously went real well, because that bookstore is gone, and the Subway is gone, and this whatever place is gone. But here you see the other two payphones that were there, and what's interesting here is this happens so frequently. If you ever try to find, if you ever do this, which I'm sure you never do, but if you ever go back trying to find evidence of a payphone, having existed on a spot within the last, 10, 15 years, however long they've been doing Street View type things, it's amazing how often you find people using the phone. I mean, this dude at least appears to be thinking about using the phone. I don't know. But so maybe this isn't the best example, but I can't tell you how many times I've done these Street View things looking for old payphones and found that somebody there was actually using the phone. And it's just all the evidence you need that people would still use those things if only they could. So anyway, there's your little trip back in time. That's October 15th, 2009, and that's the Cyclomedia New York City Street View, which, like I said, it's my favorite alternative to the commercial Street View product. I'm not sure which street this is because there's no street sign. But one of the things that appealed to me about this area when I was looking at it on a map is that the street names are all perfectly alphabetical. I see, like, in some areas they try to do that. They try to make the streets alphabetical, but it always gets disrupted somehow. I mean, I will say that Greenpoint made a whole lot more sense to me when someone pointed out that the streets are at least partially alphabetical. I mean, that's how you know where you are, I guess. Manhattan Beach, as I was looking at it on the map, it looks like they got it right, although they don't go A to Z. I think they get as far up as, I don't remember now, it might have been M. Yeah, these are not bad looking houses. I mean, like, these two look new, or newer than others. And you know why else I wanted to come out here today is because it's going to get up to 90. And my body has just been begging for 90-degree days. And the hot sun and the sweat. I just love when my whole body sweats. It's like my body weeps. Someone needs to mow the lawn here. But it's not going to hit 90 and probably not for another couple of hours. But I want to be outside in all of this because it just hasn't happened. It's been either I have to work on a really hot day and sit at the desk all day, but really there just haven't been that many hot days. We haven't had a real hot streak, and it's middle of July. I believe this is going to be Shore Boulevard or Shore Road or something. One of the many shore roads in New York. I remember probably in the early days of the GPS things that people had in their cars. This guy stopped me over by, it was like Long Island City, over by Vernon Boulevard. And he told me that his GPS told him Shore Boulevard was supposed to be here. And first of all, I was like, which Shore Boulevard do you even mean? And I think he meant the one over at Astoria Park, but he really wasn't clear. But he was like getting angry at me because Shore Boulevard wasn't here. And he was getting angry at me because his GPS thing was telling him that Shore Boulevard was here. And I'm like, it's not here, dude. There's no Shore Boulevard here. What else do you want from me? And he's like, oh, there's no Shore, this thing, GPS, look at it. I'm like, sorry. Oh, okay, that was Kensington Street. Okay, well, just to clarify what I was talking about with the alphabetical streets in this area, and it turns out I'm actually wrong, but that's nothing new. But when I saw this originally on the map, it's you can see where it's A for Amherst, B for Beaumont, C for Coleridge, D for Dover, E for Exeter, and then for whatever reason, Ocean Avenue interrupts. And then you go back to the alphabet, which is Falmouth, and then Girard, and then Hastings. I for Irwin, J for Jaffrey, K for Kensington, which is that street I was just on, and then L for Langham, M Mackenzie, N Norfolk, and then O is Oxford, and P is Pembroke. And that's where it ends, because that's where Kingsborough Community College takes over. But that's the closest I've found recently, at least, to a perfectly alphabetical sequence of street names. When I was there, I just didn't notice that Ocean Avenue had intruded upon the alphabeticization of Manhattan Beach. Looks like the marina is over on the other side. So this is Shore Boulevard in Manhattan Beach. If you're looking for Shore Boulevard in Queens and your GPS tells you this is it, well, your GPS is wrong. But people believe GPS like it's the gospel. And I see people do it over and over and over. I thought this was going to be a prescription bottle that somebody left behind, and I've always been surprised to find how many people throw these bottles away without taking off their name, address, phone number, and a little window into their medical history. But this doesn't have any identifying info. It's an empty canister of medical cannabis, and the strain is Orangeade, or was. And that place is a beauty. I wouldn't want to have to take care of it, but it's a nice thing to see. Okay, so that's my boat. I only take it out every couple of weeks, just to keep it, keep the engines in shape. Obviously, I'm joking. Never really had any interest in owning a boat, but I like going out on boats. Until lately, when I started getting seasick or motion sickness. I mean, even the Staten Island ferry makes me feel ill. And that didn't used to be the case. Look at this beauty. Very Romanesque. I mean, I guess that's a residence, but it could be like a mausoleum. No, it's a beauty though. Yeah, I think I've said this in other videos that these are the kind of houses a lot of people think don't exist in New York. We all live in tenement buildings. But believe it, there are houses with yards and swimming pools and basketball hoops. This is Dover Street. I knew Joya for, I guess, 24, maybe 23 years. He'd been kind of just a constant presence in a way, even after he moved away. If you've hung around this channel a long time, you might remember me talking about a dial-up bulletin board system that I used to connect to starting in 1993 from, I guess, until about 1995. That's how Joe and I connected. Or that's where Joe and I connected. He was among the first people I ever met in person from the world of online communications. And he's, I guess, among those, he's the one that had been the most lasting friend. I don't know. I don't know that I can put into words what he meant to me. It's more than, I don't know, more than you might expect for somebody that I probably never called out by name. No, I did actually call him out by name in some of the videos here, and he was always pretty excited about that. That was the thing about Joe, was he was almost every time I would post a video to this channel, he would call me on the phone, and just with his comments or observations or associated bits of knowledge. You know, it could have been anything from a 5-second video of a barber's pole to a 40-minute trip to, I don't know, Rutherford, New Jersey, to go hunting for payphones. He would almost always call me on the phone afterwards, just to comment or just talk about it. His background, I'm sort of using the obituary that I helped craft. I was pretty much peripheral to the writing of the obit, but I did make some useful contributions. I mean, it was already written by the time I got involved. But Joe was born on January 1st, New Year's Day, 1955. He graduated from Kenyon College, and got a master's degree in journalism from Boston University. He also studied fiction writing at Yale with David Milch. Now, he'd been a columnist and a reporter at a local newspaper in Idaho Springs, Colorado, before moving to New York City and joining the staff of Diversion magazine in 1982. And he subsequently worked as an editor for both Modern Photography and American Photo magazines. And he began making his own pictures in a variety of photographic styles and formats. His Polaroid Type 55 work is included in the Polaroid Company's corporate collection, and it was published in the Polaroid book, published by Taschen. And Joe was one of the last photographers to maintain a studio in the last Bohemia, as it was called. That was the studio that was up on one of the top floors of Carnegie Hall. And in 1991, he wrote a column for the New York Times called Camera. Now, he was an early adapter of social media, as I mentioned earlier, and what makes that notable to me is that he was no techie. I hosted his websites for a bunch of years, and I can tell you that he could look at a line of code and just not see anything, just Greek, or whatever you want to call it. So it was notable in retrospect to me that he was even able to get online in like 1993 or 1994, because it was not for the faint of heart, dealing with modems and windsock and screeching modem noises and all this other stuff. But he was there. He got in, and he often described those days on Mindvox. That was the name of the BBS. I let it slip. I didn't want to ever name them that BBS, but it's what difference does it make now? The place was called Mindvox, and he would talk about that place to his dying days. It really was a huge influence in his life. That was where he met Carrie Advocate. Among others, she was our mutual friend who died very young. She was a really gifted photographer. She was photographer at his wedding, and I played piano at his wedding up in Rochester. Now, his obituary skillfully omits the fact that he was ever married at all. Although at first there was mention of his wife's name. He had always said getting married was the biggest mistake he ever made in his life, and he implored me, just Mark, don't ever do it. It's just don't get married. It's not worth it in any way. Obviously, he had a uniquely bad experience, but I think his marriage lasted probably like 5 or 6 months. But it caused him to relocate to Minneapolis, and after the quick divorce, he ended up staying there for about 5.5 years. And he worked at a bowling alley, which probably sounds, I don't know what that sounds like to some people, but it was one of these trendy bowling alley music venues and art theaters or art galleries. So it's not like he was just handing out bowling shoes. He was getting involved with the events and the artsy side of things. So after 5.5 years in Minneapolis, he moved on to Chicago. And I honestly don't remember what reason or what impetus there was for him to move to Chicago. He moved to Minneapolis to be with his wife, and I'll get to why he relocated later, but I don't remember why he moved to Chicago, if there was any reason other than that he just wanted to be back in a city. But he moved to Chicago in 2003, and it was while he was there that he wrote the book that would become The Guitar and the New World. It was published in 2013. And as it's described in his obit, it was an idiosyncratic series of linked essays that bind together family history, the history of the guitar and its manufacture, the murder of President William McKinley, and Joya's own lightly held theory that the American blues idiom may owe more to native, indigenous musical roots than to any African basis. And this doesn't mention who the publisher was. Let me see if I'll find my copy, because I remember thinking it was a pretty prestigious publisher. Where is my copy? I do have a lot of books, don't I? Yes, I finally found it. The Guitar and the New World, A Fugitive History. Published by Excelsior Editions and in print at the State University of New York. I remember reading it and being surprised that it was really not a history of the guitar as much as it was a lot more about race in America than I'd been led to expect. He'd been talking to me about the book for years as he was putting it together. Now, he wrote a whole bunch of stuff, and he took a whole lot of pictures, much of it available online through various sources. And he was taking photos all the way to the end. I want to get back to our connection about Carrie Advocate. Now, she was a big favorite of his, and he she considered him a mentor of sorts, a photography mentor. And he was, forever shaken by the fact that she just suddenly died at 23, I think. I mean, she just up and left us one day, and nobody had any idea she was sick. And it does appear in retrospect that she didn't even know she was sick. But she didn't come up in every single conversation that we had, but I don't think a year went by where we didn't refer to her again and what might have been. And this was all right up to the end, as recently as I think November, December of last year. He emailed me to ask if he should buy snob.net, the domain name that Carrie used to own, and that was her original photo portfolio website, and that was the domain name that she got. And I think somebody was selling it for like 25 grand. But I mean, as recently as it's the end of last year, he was talking about building a tribute site to her, to Carrie. I mean, that's the thing about Joe, I guess, is the word I would use to describe him was that he was a fan. In these discussions that I had with some of our mutual acquaintances, someone else used the word enthusiast, and I think that's probably a better word than fan. I don't know. Take your pick, but he would just get so excited about things. He could not stop talking about Vivian Maier, the photographer who had a Chicago connection that he shared. And he thought she was just an absolute master. But he got very worked up about that and got involved in the scene a little bit while he was in Chicago. But he moved from Chicago to, where was it anyway? I mean, when was it, rather? He moved to Livingston, Montana in 2017. I remember this is another thing that didn't make the obit, but, and this might be because the writer didn't know about it, and I wouldn't want to put it in there, but he moved there to be with a woman that he'd met at a college reunion. He thought everything was all set up, all buttoned up, all good to go, but he got there and she just ghosted him. He wasn't even sure where to find her after a while. But that's how he ends up in Livingston, Montana. And he never really talked too bitterly about it, but maybe it says something that he never talked about it at all. One of the more horrible things that Joe did was, I don't know why I'm laughing about it because it really was horrible, but he'd been dating a woman for I think 6 or 7 years, and they seemed perfectly fine together, perfectly perfect for each other, as far as I could tell. And I've been talking to people the past week who made the same comment, that how could he have done what he did? He just dumped her one day and said told her he was going off to marry a woman half his age. That was the other little footnote about the fated wedding in Rochester, was that I think the woman he married was like 25, and he was, I think, pushing 50 at the time. And he just dumped Susan high and dry, and she was understandably bitter about it for a very long time. But a sort of strange thing happened, though. I'd never understood his phone situation in those days. He would give me a number as if that was his place. He would give me a number as if I was calling his apartment, but he didn't really have an apartment. He was staying with relatives or his girlfriend or, whoever. I didn't really understand this. So I called one of the numbers that he gave me to get in touch with him about the wedding. And a woman answers, and I ask, is Joe there? And she's like, no. And I said, oh, this must be Sarah. And that was his bride-to-be. But this wasn't Sarah. This was Susan, the woman that he had just dumped. And, and she was sort of not happy about this, whatever you want to call it, this bit of kismet or coincidence, because I don't believe in coincidence, but kismet or something, whatever the evil opposite of kismet is. So that was a really horrible moment, but because I call looking for Joe, and then when his suddenly ex-girlfriend answers, I ask, oh, well then this must be the woman that he dumped you for, right? Yeah. Anyway, in closing, I'll just add that he was famous among his peers for his annual birthday telephone calls. And he called me every year on my birthday, and he called everybody in his circle of friends. He would call them every year on their birthday just to catch up and check in and say happy birthday. And that's about the last time I talked to him was my birthday this year. And then all I can say is he didn't sound right. Something was wrong. I didn't want to ask, but just something didn't sound right. And then I don't know how much later it was that I happened to check one of the social media sites, and I saw that, I forgot to mention that there was one love of his life that he dated for many years, and that's mainly who wrote the obituary. Not long after I had that last phone conversation with Joe, I looked out on social media and I saw that that love of his life had been traveling from New York to Montana. And when I saw that, I knew something had to be off. Something had to be wrong. There was no reason for her to be traveling to Montana. They always loved each other all the way to the end, but they weren't going to have any grand reunion or anything. And that's when she told me that it was I contacted her and I said, you're in Montana. I talked to him recently. He sounded bad. What's going on? And she said it was just a brain tumor that was voracious. Just a very, very fast-moving cancer that, they charitably gave him 6 months to live, but he didn't even get 2 months. And that's all I have to say.